All right, on to another topic now. A recent US Census Bureau report projected that the US will become a majority-minority nation for the first time in 2043. In other words, the majority of the people living in this country will not be Caucasian. From there, the gap is only expected to widen. Right now, minorities make up about 37% of the U.S. population, or account for about 116.2 million people. By 2060, however, the minority population is expected to become about 57% of the population, or about 241.3 million people. So we are beginning to see this shift in demographics, a shift that has been a long time coming. But one university student, a Maryland student, isn't lamenting. Instead, he has proposed a white student union at Towson University. It's here in Maryland. It's an idea that has gained a lot of attention and even more criticism. Matthew Heimbach is a senior studying U.S. history, and he's the founder and commander of the White Student Union. He joins me now to explain why he wants to start this union. So let's start off with how did you come up with this idea?
Well, I came up with the idea on the fact that you see in America that every single racial group has an advocacy group. We have the NAACP, we have AIPAC, we have, groups for Hispanics, for Asians, for everybody. So kind of the idea is that people come together on kind of tribal lines and they advocate for the best interests of their people. And whites are the only group that doesn't have that. So the idea that students, when on college campuses, were facing affirmative action, which discriminates against white students, not being able to get into the college or, not be able to get proper scholarships based on how much work we've done. It's, a problem that we need to face. And these demographic trends, which are a shift, which I think are bad for white students. So we need to come together on racial lines, just as every other group has, and advocate for the best interests of our people.
And so let's break this down into a few things. First of all, what will your union be doing in specific? What are you hoping to do?
Well, what we're already doing is we're kind of doing three different things. First of all is education. So we've brought in speakers so far, such as Jared Taylor, to come and talk an idea of what is white identity. So hopefully by bringing in speakers, that you're not going to hear those ideas in a cultural Marxist classroom. So bring that to the campus community. Second of all is try and be a positive force for campus. Kind of the idea of where you have political parties like Golden Dawn, which take care of Greek people first. It's the idea that white students that were doing safety patrols on campus to try and look for people that are perpetrating violent crimes, but also doing blood drives, things like that, donating to the homeless. So that's the second thing we're trying to do. And the third is be a political force, that attacking affirmative action on campus because it's discriminatory, and also raising awareness about things like the fact we allow illegal immigrants now to get in-state tuition, that that's money that's being taken from our university, from legal U.S. citizens, and being spent on criminals. So that's kind of the three things we're focusing on.
And in your last answer, you just said that you are interested in promoting white interests. Describe what a white interest is.
Well, the white interest is simply the idea of the white race in general being able to protect our culture, being able to protect our countries, being able to work in what is best for us. So programs like affirmative action are bad. Unrestricted third world immigration into this country is bad for white interests. Free trade agreements like NAFTA, which send our jobs overseas to third world countries like Mexico that undercut our wages and put us out of work. Those are bad for white interests. So culturally, whites are under attack. And it's only going to continue as we become less and less the population. As we saw with Barack Obama's re-election, that Mitt Romney got over 60% of the white vote, but that wasn't enough. So as the demographic trends shift, Republicans are going to be unable to win an election, and whites need to either come together and stand up and fight together, or else we're going to lose everything.
So Matthew, what qualifies as a white person?
A white person would be, a Caucasian, someone from Europe, so stretching all the way from the Iberian Peninsula all the way to Russia.
And who's going to be allowed in your group?
Well, everyone's going to be allowed in a group, and that's actually the one thing that people don't understand. It's not a whites-only group. It's people who are standing and advocating for white interests, just as there's white members of the Black Student Union on campus. There's Black and Hispanic members and Asian members and Jewish members in our group that works for the best interests of Hispanics. So it's the idea we're not limiting people from coming in. It's an open door. If you believe in white culture, if you want to protect white culture and advance white interests and fight discrimination on campus, you can join.
Okay, so you would accept black people, minority students, Hispanics, anybody. But in a recent interview, you said with the Big Picture host Tom Hartman that you don't consider Jewish people white. Can you explain?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's the idea, if you look in terms of the Jewish population, that they're not white, that they have, you know, things like Tay-Sachs disease, for instance, where that is a disease that is only found within the Jewish population. So genetically, I mean, we're not even talking about the way someone looks, but genetically there is a difference amongst the majority of the Jewish population as the Jewish race. And the idea that we're questioning them as a separate people, that's a relatively new thing in Western civilization. I mean, you talk to someone for 2,000 years, everyone knew that Jews were a separate people. That doesn't mean we're advocating discrimination against them. It's just that they, as a people, are advocating for their best interests, and because they are not white, they might not be advocating for the best interests of white people.
So let me ask you this. How have you personally been discriminated against as a white person?
Well, in terms of discrimination, you can just look at hiring.
I'm looking at you specific. I wanted specific examples.
Well, specifically, first of all, things dealing with anti-white language. Racial slurs being hurled on campus. It's the sort of thing where, as a student, if I were to use any slurs against minorities, homosexuals, Jews, then what would happen? I would probably get suspended or possibly even expelled. But black students on campus, Hispanic students, are allowed to essentially say whatever they want, and they can get away with it. And that's an unfortunate sign of the times, where being pro-white, or even just simply being proud of the way God made you, if you're white, it seems like a sin. But if you're any other racial group, then that's okay.
One of the things that you have said in the past, in a few past interviews, is that you're really for this. If there's a black student organization or a Hispanic student organization, why not there be a white student organization? And there is some substance to that. But one of the things I do want to ask you is, it does kind of seem like your organization takes things to another level, and it's not necessarily promoting white unity. What it is promoting is kind of separate but equal. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, the very idea that we're facing, that this isn't simply political problems we're facing in America the potential of losing this as our country. I mean, as Pat Buchanan talks about, you can't take a first world country and fill it with third world people and expect it to remain a first world country. So the very ground that our forefathers fought and died for, we've now inherited that, and whites need to be able to come together to fight to save our culture.
This country was founded, though, on more than just white people. It was founded on the backs of slaves and on the backs of Native Americans that made this land what it is and helped the U.S. and Americans come together and become Americans. So we are, in essence, a nation of immigrants. So when you say things like you don't want immigrants in your schools and whatnot, I mean, it kind of seems like contradictory to what your group stands for.
Well, in terms of looking at, the great Samuel Huntington wrote in his book, Who Are We? He talked about what is the foundation of America. Now, we were immigrants from Europe, and that's the thing. We shared blood, we shared culture, that there was something more that tied us together. Now you look at America, and what is an American? An American is this abstract idea that we're bound together by capitalism, and we kind of salute the same flag, and that's about it. That there's no strong identity of what is an American. There's no community anymore. We're simply a multicultural hodgepodge. You look at LA, that's not an example of what America was founded as. It's nearing a third world country in and of its own right. So that's kind of a problem, I think.
We're almost out of time, but do you consider yourself to be a white nationalist?
I would consider myself to be a Southern nationalist, because as I see that the Southern people, there was a war fought over it. The idea that we've always identified as being a separate people. Now, that doesn't mean I have any ill will towards my brothers to the north, and it doesn't mean I have any ill will towards any racial group. I simply want to be able to protect my culture and my people and advance the best interests of them.
A very interesting discussion, and I know you've taken a lot of flack for it, but we appreciate your time here today. That was Matthew Heimbach, founder of the White Student Union.